South Vietnam is already under attack, sometimes by a single assassin, sometimes by a band of guerrillas, recently by full battalions. The peaceful borders of Burma.
Alright, today we're going to go into politics, psyops, and why they fought. Today we're going to do Vietnam, of course, nothing else. So we're going to go through the domino effect, we're going to go through the Truman Doctrine, and the Marshall Plan, and Vietnam's going to get something a bit special, because I think the whole reason they fought is a bit special, and that's why they get a big chunk and not little chunks. Because how I wrote this, I don't know if this might make it into the final cut, but I wrote it into 3 separate paragraphs for America and their containment plans, and Ho Chi Minh basically gets nationalism. Probably this is not going to make it in, but who knows, probably at the end you might hear it, so why not? Let's go. Probably at the end. This sounds like something you would finish off with. Let's go. The domino effect, containment for communism in the world. George Kennan devised that the US had to stop the spread of communism in places that were not communist already at the time. It was to be contained, and if it was contained, it would die out because it cannot spread. And just like bacteria, germs, water, for instance, you spill it on the table, it's going to go everywhere, but if you wipe it up, it's basically contained. It's not going to go anywhere else. It's basically in the towel, you throw it in the bin, or I don't know what you do with your towels, but that's you. So the domino effect essentially was the idea that if a country was close to communist Russia, say China would fall. Then China was close to Korea, well, North Korea, so North Korea fell to communism. Well, I mean, kinda. The Allies had the whole thing, well, after World War II to come and split up Korea, but I mean, yeah, why not? We're not going to get into that. We could probably get into that at the end of the series, but Thailand could have been a communist country. It had a lot of communist revolutions, and Indonesia, which is the French East Indies, was the French East Indies. So Indonesia has some communist stuff. Vietnam would eventually fall. Laos, Cambodia is its own separate state. So basically, the fear was just like in World War II, Nazi Germany, all the country around it, Czechoslovakia, Poland, France, Sweden, Denmark, Norway. The Soviets tried to get Finland but failed. They nearly got Britain, and when the Allies stormed Italy, they got northern Italy. So I don't think it would count, because I mean that was their whole deal. But essentially, the domino effect was if one country fell to communism, then another, until that whole region was to fall to communism. So the idea for the domino effect, or the idea for all 3 of these plans that I have, the most prominent plans, which are the Truman Doctrine, the domino effect, and the Marshall Plan, which they're basically for all containment, all with their own purposes, all with their own reasons. But yeah, so the Truman Doctrine is actually the newly elected president Truman issued a document to Congress in 1947 about how to contain and control the Soviet expansionism. The long telegram explained that America had to deal with communism by force. There was no talking it out with the Soviets, so they couldn't reason with the Soviets. I guess that's what they tried to say. So we had to arm and fund revolutionaries that were against communism, very anti-communism. which didn't work out sometimes, especially like in South Vietnam, where Diem was kinda a regime and not a government. So that didn't work out for America very well, and they funded a lot of terrorist groups that came back to bite them in the butt. So, but I mean, it was the time, so you couldn't fight, and that is why you have all the proxy wars, because America could not get involved with the actual country, because then that would be the national superpower, and then who knows, you might start World War III. So they had to fund the anti-communists while the communists funded the communist regimes, and that is how they got proxy wars. It was like them fighting. It was like they were the chess players behind the board, and the people fighting were the pawns and kings and stuff. So they're basically the people behind the chessboard, and they're gonna fund who they want to move here, who they want to move there. So they're basically in control. They're indirectly funding a war. So that's why it is called a proxy war, because the two opposing sides are not directly in the war, but the two opposing sides in the war itself are fighting for the benefit and reasons why the people that funded the war are fighting for. So it's basically, in a sense, you giving a person to do something you don't want to do. So you directly funded them to go and walk your dog, even though you didn't want to walk your dog, but you still get to walk your dog, and your mother is going to be like, you didn't walk the dog, but yeah, you did carry the dog out for a walk, so I won't punish you for that. And finally, the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan had a purpose to rebuild mainland Europe in 1947 with the recovery of the European economics, trade, and economy. But it also had a secret motive, because they were pouring in $13 billion into rebuilding Europe, but it had a secret agenda, kinda. It was basically the economic repellent for communism, because let's be honest, communism could only thrive in war-torn countries, and countries that were like third world countries, especially like it could thrive in Africa, Asia, where colonization was basically over and finished with. So the country was basically in ruins, and the Soviets are like, come, we fund you, but you have to be communists. So the idea was that, especially in war-torn Europe, where people's houses were destroyed, people's families were killed, people were gassed, and a lot of crazy experiments and all that. So they basically said, if you pour enough money into Europe itself, that you could essentially just ward off communism the old-fashioned way, with economy and wealth and everything that makes the capitalist system good. Because if a communist tells you you could work hours, eat bread, alright, picture this, you're starving, and a communist says, come, join us, you can eat bread, drink water, have a house, have a pretty decent car, and have everything you need, then you'll be like, meh, I ain't got nothing left to lose, so why not? But if you were in a Rolls Royce listening to Madonna, drinking fizzy pop, and eating hamburgers, and the communist said, come, I can give you bread, water, food, a pretty decent car, and land to work, you'll be like, nah, I already got everything I need. And basically the Communist Party in that part of Europe or world would kind of doubt, because I mean, what is the point of having a communist government if everyone's doing pretty alright? You got jobs, you got people working, you got people buying, you got trade, you got food, you got water, you got everything you need and want. So that was the that would die out, and the more and more it died out, the weaker and weaker US expansionism would get. So in a sense, that is basically the three major driving points for America and their Cold War politics and psyop operations. So that's pretty much it. What's it gonna get? Nationalism, the fight for North Vietnam. America said it was a war in Vietnam. It was a war against communism. It was a war against. It was a war for defending a free nation, and it was a test of American resolve. Vietnam was the longest and bloodiest war in American history. It was also the furthest away from home ever, and it was the most divisive war ever, split among the American population. So let's go back to Vietnam and see why they wanted to be so independent. European explorers just explored and found the region in the 1600s. They first came to spread Christianity, then trade, then plunder, then finally they conquered Vietnam. In the late 1900s, the region of Vietnam, which was comprised of Tonkin, Nam and Cochin China, had been joined together with Cambodia and Laos to create what the French called French Indochina. The Vietnamese were basically sent into slave labor, farming rice and rubber and other goods to fuel the French Empire abroad and at home. But even under their rule, the Vietnamese stayed very independent. Some rebel bands would even tear up the countrysides, then disappear into nowhere. The French soon stopped the rebellious behaviour, but only they had to do it lethally, with lethal force. While the population was split on remaining independent, some actually brought into the idea of Western clothes and Western technologies and cultures, and they actually held key positions in the French administration, while others wanted French occupation to end while they fled the country. Ho Chi Minh, one not if the most influential leader of the independent Vietnam movement, he was soon to lead 100,000 Vietnamese patriots to victory. Inspired by President Woodrow Wilson's pledge of self-determination for all nations, in 1919 struck a chord with Ho Chi Minh. He soon realized that the words of Woodrow Wilson did not apply to Asia, so then he turned to socialism, and then he finally converted into a communist. He was to go and make the Communist Republic of Vietnam first, and then he traveled to Moscow, where he saw Stalin and Trotsky start and see through the revolution in Russia, which inspired Ho Chi Minh, even though he later wrote it was patriotism that inspired him and not communism. So they were still under French rule, but in 1945, close to the end of World War II, the Vietnamese were ready to fight off the Japanese. Well, a little bit before that, but French was knocked out of the war, but so they couldn't supply anything to the Vietnamese really, even if they wanted to. They couldn't supply, but the Ho Chi Minh saw that it was a chance to fight the Japanese out of their nation and fully become independent, because French was basically knocked out. It had zero zilch money to have an empire now. So if they go out of Japan, they basically thought, well, we're independent, and they forged a new independence from kicking out the Japanese, especially in August 1945, when World War II was officially ended with the Japanese and the Germans and the Italians. So Ho Chi Minh basically had his country backed and made the Declaration of Independence similar to the American Declaration of Independence, which was very what's the word I'm looking for? Very flattering to the Americans, because they want freedom and goddamn, I know they want freedom, and they want freedom in all nations, because at that point communism was spreading. So any nationalist movement, any freedom movement was great. But then the Americans saw Ho as a communist, and then it just went downhill from there. And unfortunately, Ho Chi Minh and Vietnam were caught on the wrong side of the Cold War against the Soviets. Because remember, Ho Chi Minh was basically he was a communist, but when the French tried to take back, but we learned that last week. But basically, briefly, the French tried to take back Indochina, and Vietnam's newly formed independence was crushed basically. So Ho Chi Minh had to fight and regain independence and flush out the French so they can regain independence for their country again. And then now when the Americans come, they basically the Americans are just replacing the French, not knowing that it's the fact that Ho was a communist that brought them there in the first place. Because in the beginning, America was actually pleased that was actually against French colonization, and trying to keep North Vietnam as a colony full, because they wanted free nations, like I said before. Not because of before the Cold War and stuff, but they wanted free nations. So when Ho Chi Minh was realized as the communist, he was basically put on the communist bloc as the Americans saw. So that's why they had to try and stomp out North Vietnam from spreading their communist ideals into the south. So that's why they backed Syngman Rhee. But like I said, this is basically the first video. This is just politics. I think I've touched some stuff on the first video. But anyway guys, thank you for watching so much. It's going to be kind of weird, but I record separate from my videos now, so it's going to sound better because there's no crickets. Oh, they've finally come out. They've actually come out. So I'm basically going to end the video here. Politics and psyops actually lasted. I kind of padded them out. I will be honest. They were kind of padded out, but they were kind of neutral information, basically. Kind of explaining them a bit better, because I mean everything is scripted, so I just read what's on the script. So we have 8 minutes. We finished about 8 minutes. So basically they're basically 10 and 10. So hopefully with padding they're going to basically be about 20 minutes. I don't expect psyops and politics and policies to be like the longest thing ever, because even I find them a tad bit boring. They're kind of interesting, don't get me wrong. Truman Doctrine, Domino Effect, Nationalism, pretty good. So basically the schedule now is going to be beginning, policies and politics and all that good stuff. Then it's going to be tactics. Then we're going to go to war heroes. Then we're going to go to war horror stories. Then we're going to go to right, that's American hero. That's heroes, war heroes. No, we're supposed to go to tactics, but we'll sort it out. You'll see. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be 10 parts. So we finished part 1 last week. It's getting some pretty nice views. I don't really care about the views as long as you're learning something. I guess it's okay. They're going to be home just now, so they're going to make more noise than the flies. If you don't know who I'm referring to, I'm talking to my family, which are very loud, and I'm kind of in the front house, so they have every reason to be loud. Because I mean, it's the front house, it's the living room, so it's like, why would I make all the noise I want? Because it's not your bedroom. And why don't I record in my bedroom? Good question. With like a little gap on the wall of my bedroom, so it's gonna block out the sound, but if they scream loud enough, you're gonna hear it. It does have a bit of insulation, but at the end of the day, you're gonna hear it because it's just like a little slit across the top. I don't know what kind of designer or what kind of laziness they're doing, but I would like them to board up the whole thing at one time. But that slit on top of that slit actually saved me a couple of times, honestly, because I had to climb over it and unlock my door. But I mean, because the store just took off the door. But anyway, that's all I have to say for you guys. Hopefully this Tuesday thing would work out now, because they go out for a little while, so it's kind of like my Saturdays. But I'm gonna be working a bit on Saturdays now for, you know, that extra cha-ching, and also unless they go back out Saturdays, I'm not really feeling Saturdays, but I will still take my Saturdays. Don't get me wrong, I will still take my Saturdays. Saturdays are still best day, but I mean, if I could push forward all this work during the week, and then Saturday I basically just press the upload button, or fine tune, you know, I wouldn't just upload it, but you know, fine tune, just go through it. I can actually like watch the entire video for myself, because I just ram through the video, make sure the audio levels are good, make sure my voice is pretty, you know, the main volume, you know what I mean, like what do you call it, the main focus. I can't remember what you call it, but there's the word that was on top of my head and I just lost it. You know when that happens, I hate when that happens. So I have to piece together some audio now. I'm gonna start editing some video now. I might actually catch some footage to. It's politics and stuff like this are not really gonna require footage, but I have a kind of good idea for what I want to do in the party video. You just have to wait and see. But thanks again, guys, and we're gonna end the video off here now. I'm not playing no game, so you know, literally and figuratively, I'm just gonna end it here. I'm probably thinking about making an intro and outro for every different war, but for right now, we'll just I'm thinking about making just like this, even if it's just 15 seconds of intro and outro. I will try my best, but yeah, guys, have a good day, good night, wherever you are. This is gonna sound really weird. Damn, it's getting loud. Good thing I recorded Nationalism like 10 minutes before everything just started getting loud. So don't mind all this in the background. This is just me talking at the end of the video. It's not to do with the main thing anyway. So good luck, learn something, and even though it's summer, you can still learn something and watch me get a 360 headshot. Oh baby, a triple. Enjoy yourselves, and I'll see you next week, which is gonna sound weird, but yeah, I'm gonna see you next week for the future. Later.